Taylor Swift is handing the conservative agenda on a silver platter to the masses. She's doing what he wants everyone else to do, is to get married and have white babies.
Some of the Swifties are not coping well, and it's showing. We're going to break this down, plus so much more, in today's episode of the Brad vs. Everyone podcast, my daily show where we take on social media trends and internet insanity, all from an independent perspective. Up first, we've got to check in with the Swifties, which is what Taylor Swift fans call themselves. Now, there are many factions of Swifties, as I've come to learn, and some of y'all are totally normal, no shade, no hate, nothing but love for y'all. Then there's some of the Swifties on the internet, on TikTok, on Twitter, and they're not okay. Like, they're deeply mentally unwell, and they're not coping well, given the album that just came out from Taylor Swift, which I haven't listened to. I've heard people, even a lot of her fans, don't really like it. I've heard some of the lyrics are kind of cringy, but what I have not heard from any stable, normal people is that it's like some sort of white supremacist, far-right takeover dog whistle of Taylor Swift. But that is what Swifties online are saying. This is according to New York Post columnist and friend of the show, Ricky Schlott. Here is a video of her explaining this phenomenon. Let's take a look.
I want to have your white babies, and I actually want our entire neighborhood to be racially homogenous. She went through this entire thing with Trump, right? About how she and her fan base did not like being called childless cat ladies. And now Taylor is calling y'all childless cat ladies.
Either the life of a showgirl is one big racist, homophobic dog whistle, or everyone has lost their absolute minds. Currently singing about your new fiance is endorsing eugenics now. And the song Cancelled is a MAGA anthem. The Hamlet character Ophelia a happy ending instead of a tragic one is an endorsement of the patriarchy. The song Opalite is a white supremacist anthem for I don't know why. And it's also homophobic too. And also racist while we're at it. The question is a dog whistle really a dog whistle if only the offended party can hear it?
That is a very good point, because a lot of these people love to read between the lines and find like dog whistles and microaggressions. And sometimes it's like, if you have to reach so hard that you practically deserve a gold medal for the like mental gymnastics you're pulling, then maybe it's not actually there. Like maybe you're hallucinating, or maybe you are trying to be a victim. That's what a lot of this comes down to. Terminally online people with brain rot who are just obsessed with finding ways to be the victim. Now, when we look at the specific examples of this that Ricky lays out in her New York Post article about this, it becomes all the more clear how absurd some of these online meltdowns are. So, her article, titled, "Is Taylor Swift's album really full of white supremacy and homophobia, or has everyone lost their minds?" Taylor Swift's new album, The Life of a Showgirl, is barely 3 days old, and already woke killjoys are tearing it apart, finding offensive lyrics where there are none. Overly online social media critics of Swift apparently instantaneously decided the new album is rife with racism and homophobia, as well as secret messages of support for the patriarchy, eugenics, and Donald Trump. We should just pause on this for how funny this is, because she was like explicitly pro-Kamala in the election and has been very openly anti-Trump. So they're just reaching so hard here. Forensic, and she put this in scare quotes for good reason, investigations have uncovered dog whistles in the songs, but only woke detectives themselves are capable of hearing them. Either Swift is a covert alt-right influencer, or young critics have been taught to see oppression everywhere, including where it clearly is not. So let's get into some of these examples. Every track on the album, which came out on Friday, has already been dissected for, quote, offensive content. Swift's track Opalite has been dubbed everything from high-key a white supremacist anthem to low-key giving homophobia and a cryptic declaration that Swift is a lily white queen. Oh? What? Excuse me? Her song Cancelled has been dragged for supposedly being pro-MAGA, despite Swift's consistently democratic political record. I like my friends cancelled is the most tone-deaf lyric a white billionaire with MAGA friends could release in this climate. A tweet with almost 100,000 likes reads, I do think that lyric is a little bit cringe, but it's not like offensive. I mean, okay. Yeah, so like, all right. Who likes to hang out with boring people who are never controversial? I do not particularly. Anyway, Ricky continues, the singer has been dragged for maintaining a friendship with Brittany Mahomes, wife of NFL star Patrick Mahomes, who controversially liked an Instagram post about the 2024 GOP platform. Swift endorsed Vice President Kamala Harris, but didn't disavow her friend, who presumably is conservative. God forbid the singer demonstrate that you can be friends across party lines. What a terrible lesson. I know, it's like, okay, so if they're suggesting that she is saying by canceled friends that she likes to have some friends who are like MAGA or conservative or whatever, so what? How is that controversial in any sane world that they hold the political views of roughly half the country and she's still friends with them? That just makes her a normal person, which I guess these hyper online Swifties just can't relate to. And I guess that makes sense. That part does make sense. Now, in her song Wish List, Swift says she wants to have a couple kids and get the quote whole block looking like you. So in terms of her fiance, I guess now, Travis Kelce. But some went so far as to suggest this is an allusion to eugenics. Um, One TikToker claimed to see a subtext, which she read as, quote, I want to have your white babies, and I actually want our entire neighborhood to be racially homogenous. She continued, now Taylor's calling y'all childless cat ladies because she's about to pop out some kids. Sorry, no. First of all, it is normal for her to want to have kids with the person she loves and to have like offspring that look like that's just normal, and it's not about racism. The other thing here is she's not shaming other people for not having kids just because she's excited about having her own kids. She's not. Like that's just a total fabrication. She's not calling everyone else a childless cat lady just because she wants to have kids. And it's actually kind of like unfeminist of these super woke people to suggest that. I thought the whole point was that you get to choose for yourself, which is what I think you should get to choose as a woman, right? Like whatever if you want to have lots of kids, if you want to have no kids, just focus on a career. I think it's your life. You should do what you want. And I think that's how Taylor Swift feels too. But to accuse her of shaming women for not having kids is just detached from reality. Another fan turned critic pointed out, she is free to put out a song about wanting a husband and children and a basketball hoop and a house and a cul-de-sac, but she has to accept the context that if she puts that out right now, it's going to feel like propaganda. Excuse me? What? What does that even mean? Right now? Because Trump is president, so if you want children in a house, you're a Republican. These people own themselves all the time. This is like when they see like really hot people in commercials and they're like, this is so right-wing coded. Oh gosh. Anyway, here's how Ricky Schlott sums up this article. Check her out, by the way. Her work is great. For those overly analytical individuals, everything is personal and nothing can be taken at face value. But most of these adult critics sound like teenage keyboard warriors who never grew up. This is nothing new for Swift. Over her now decades-long career, the singer has been accused of releasing racist music videos, speaking to the lowercase KKK, and being a Nazi icon, and it's all flat-out ridiculous. The years-long expedition to find bigotry where there is none and take offense where none is intended is a sad reflection on our society. I agree, though I think, I don't know. What percentage of Swifties are this deranged? I would like to think it's a small percentage, but they just get a lot of play online and on social media because that is just how stuff works now, I guess, where the craziest and wildest takes go viral and then the normal people don't post at all most of the time. So the incentive structure there is not amazing, and I think that affects most fan bases, not just Swifties. But yeah, I mean, when you valorize victimhood, and when you make oppression a social currency, you then incentivize these young people who came of age in a culture where that was very much the dominant norm in a lot of spaces and in a lot of subcultures. Then you make them want to be victims and you make them want to see oppression, even where there's just a song about wanting to have kids in a house. Like none of this is surprising to me. In a sense, it is bleak and it is unhinged. But I guess I'm just not that fazed by it because at this point, it's what I expect. I don't know. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments. Make sure you're subscribed, hit the like button, yada, yada, yada. If you're listening on audio podcasts, please take a second to rate and review the show and consider sharing it with a friend who might like it. That's the number one way that audio podcasts grow. So, but also remember, you can send in your voicemails for my Voicemail Friday episodes where I react to your woke horror stories, give you advice on your personal lives, and answer questions that you guys have for me. The link to send in a voice note to potentially be featured in an upcoming episode is in the description. Now, guys, we're going to talk about, I think it's fair to call it a hoax, basically, that is being promoted on TikTok by so-called TikTok journalists, including my absolute fave, Under the Desk News. And they are pushing a story that is just not based in reality. So I talked about it earlier this week, but the home of a South Carolina judge was burned down, and she was not in it. But her husband and other family members were, and they were injured, escaping. And the blaze was caught on camera, and it was really horrible stuff. And everybody, a lot of people kind of worried or assumed that this may be another act of political violence. This was a judge who had ruled against the Trump administration, who had come in for very harsh criticism from Trump and his allies. But I commented on this and said, we don't know. Calm down. Don't jump to conclusions. And if it's political violence, that's terrible. And regardless, we should all tone down the rhetoric, but we don't know. And there's a 48-hour rule that I've heard people talk about, and I try to generally take myself, which is to not jump to big, strong conclusions about a tragedy as it's breaking and as it's unfolding, and to kind of wait and see. And we've kind of gotten a lesson in why you're doing that, but also how people just take a stance and then cling to it and deny the facts when it comes to their ideology or their tribe or pushing one side of the story. We've gotten that from the likes of Under the Desk News, the TikTok journalist. I think at this point, she's more of a political commentator and activist. I don't really think she's doing journalism. But anyway, she put out a video very heavily suggesting that this was a targeted arson attack that received over 1 million views. Take a listen to that video now.
Sunday night, and you're really not going to believe this one. At the end of August, Trump's Department of Justice was trying to get South Carolina's voter data. The data they were seeking would have included South Carolina's voter registration list, including sensitive information like the last 4 digits of people's social security numbers or their full driver's license numbers. A group of people from South Carolina sued the Trump administration, alleging that this would infringe upon their privacy. And Judge Diane Goodstein issued a temporary restraining order to halt the process of South Carolina handing over voter data to the federal government, saying that she thinks there is a likelihood that immediate and irreparable damage could come to people if their personal information was released. Judge Goodstein is considered a liberal judge, and she is married to a longtime Democratic politician. The Trump administration was obviously very mad about this, so he called up his friend, the Republican governor of South Carolina, and the Republican governor went to a Republican judge he appointed, and that guy ended up reversing the decision. So as of 4 days ago, the Department of Justice is able to access South Carolina voter data. And then yesterday, Judge Goodstein's house exploded. It's being investigated for foul play. Her house exploded into fire. She was not home at the time. She was out walking her dogs, but 3 other members of her family were home, including her husband, who had to jump out of a window to escape the flames. He is being treated in the hospital right now, and the house burned completely to the ground. That's pretty weird, right?
Now, I think it was irresponsible to post this and to make this suggestion when it wasn't known. We didn't know whether it was arson or not. I think you should be much more careful in the insinuations you're making about such inflammatory topics before you actually know the facts. But now we have preliminary findings and conclusions from state law enforcement that very much do not suggest this. So here's the Associated Press. South Carolina's top law official says no arson evidence so far in fire that destroyed judge's home. State agents have so far found no evidence that a fire that destroyed a judge's home on a South Carolina island was intentionally set, the state's top law enforcement official said Monday. The Saturday blaze nearly burned to the ground the house, listed in property records as owned by Circuit Judge Diane Goodstein on a remote part of Edisto Island, authorities said. The investigation is still active and ongoing, and agents will issue a report when they're finished and determine the cause, State Law Enforcement Division Chief Mark Keel said in a statement. At this time, there is no evidence to indicate the fire was intentionally set. SLED agents have preliminarily found there is no evidence to support a pre-fire explosion, he said. Keel's agency almost never releases statements while investigations are ongoing beyond the basic facts, but the last sentence of his statement on Monday indicated why he made an exception. Quote, I urge our citizens, elected officials, and members of the press to exercise good judgment and not share information that has not been verified, wrote Keel, who has led the state police since 2011 and has been in law enforcement for 46 years. So now that we have these nonpartisan, career, lifetime law enforcement officials coming out and saying that the investigation is not finalized, but there's no reason to believe this was arson. There was no reason to believe this was a targeted political attack. Thankfully, TikTok journalists and creators like Under the Desk News have updated their takes, and they've come out and informed their audiences about what's really, yeah, just kidding. Yeah, like, listen, here is the update video at Under the Desk News. None of this information was presented in detail after the 1 million+ view video in any sort of follow-up, but here is the one sort of update that this person did post. Take a look.
Local police and the Republican governor of South Carolina made a statement today saying that they have not seen any foul play in the fire that burned a local judge's house to the ground. They also said there's no reason for the FBI of South Carolina to get involved in the investigation, and also said you should probably not be trusting information you hear on social media about this case. So definitely don't go to my page and watch the viral video that lays out all of the events that took place up to that woman's house being on fire.
So it is pretty clear to me that this woman is suggesting it was still arson from this update video and clinging to this despite having no evidence other than the fact that the judge was involved in controversies, which doesn't prove an arson attack. Hundreds of judges have been involved in political disputes so far in the Trump administration and didn't have their homes burned down. And fires do happen a lot more than arson, actually. Anyway, I just think that's irresponsible and reckless. And then she's also framing the oh, well, Republican governor and local police. It's state law enforcement. These are not political people, right, that are saying that there's no evidence of arson here. These are professionals. Now, maybe they're lying and there's some deep state conspiracy here to cover this up, but I don't believe that. And you've presented no evidence of it. And I just think when you have this many people turning to you, you have a responsibility to be more careful and more cautious with the claims you're advancing, especially in this moment where American politics is on such a knife edge and where people are at each other's throats and people may be inspired to do crazy things. We should all be trying to take the temperature down and stick to the facts, not like constantly inflame everything, portray everything as the worst possible scenario, even when there's no actual reason to believe that that's what happened. I think that is really reckless and a reprehensible way to use a massive platform. But I mean, probably make some money from it, probably good for engagement, just not really ethical or sound, I guess. But other people, I mean, Under the Desk News at least didn't come out and just assert as fact that this was arson. Other people are just repeating this ad nauseum and using it to spread panic and alarmism. Here is another left-wing TikToker doing exactly that.
So, a judge's house being blown up because they voted no against the Trump regime was not on my bingo card. And this is why I get so irritated when people hyper-focus on the 2028 election. Babe, the current rate that we're going at right now, today, I don't think we're going to have one. We have judges' houses being blown up because they voted no against our current president. And you think in 3.5 years we're going to have enough left so that we can have an election? Huh?
So this one is especially wild to me because not only are you asserting this thing for which we have no evidence and inflaming people and riling them up, you're then using it to suggest there will not be an election. And again, there's no evidence for that as well. Trump allowed midterm elections to continue in his last presidency. And of course, I think that will still happen today. Of course, I do believe that it will. And if it didn't, that would be terrible and an insane thing. But like, that's not a thing so far. So again, you're just riling people up and scaring them. This is my problem with a lot of these, and you see this with right-wing political commentators and influencers as well. When you're going beyond the facts to scare people in ways that are not warranted by the reality of the situation, you are creating a dangerous political environment. You are playing into their worst fears and scaring people in ways that they can go and then do crazy things. We've seen that time and time again, and I just think it is shameful. I think it's irresponsible, and that we've got to figure out a better way to approach this information ecosystem than what we're doing now, because fake or misleading stuff is just constantly going viral. And then the fact checks and the rational voices get a tiny fraction of the views. But other than that, everything is going amazing. What do you guys think? Have you seen all these people claiming without evidence and despite everything the nonpartisan law enforcement is saying that this was an arson attack on your social media timeline? Let me know in the comments. And with that, guys, that'll be it for this episode of the Brad vs. Everyone podcast. Thanks so much for tuning in. Do remember to rate and review us if you haven't yet on audio podcasts. Send in your voice notes, subscribe, like, yada, yada, yada. And we'll talk again real soon.